Lately, dinner time has really been anything that I can do to make things quick and easy to get supper ready and on the table without a lot of extra fuss and stress. And this quiche was the perfect, easy weeknight dinner. I put together this pie crust a little earlier in the day. I didn't really know if I was going to record this recipe or not, so I didn't record that part, but it was just a quick and easy pie crust that I put together really fast and put in the freezer, waiting for me to be ready for dinner. So when it was time for me to cook supper, I got the pie crust out of the freezer, allowed it to thaw a little, and then put it in my cast iron casserole pan, which I absolutely love. And if you don't have one of these, I'll link it down below so that you can maybe get one. I just went ahead and covered the whole casserole dish with the pie crust, preheated my oven to 350, and baked the pie crust for about 15 to 20 minutes. While the pie crust is baking, I'm going to gather the rest of my ingredients. I had this ham in the refrigerator for a while from Costco. It was called a carving ham. It's been really good for quick and easy sandwich meat. Also, we have used it on salads, and today I wanted to chop it up and use it in this quiche. So that ham has been a really good, quick and easy ingredient to have in the refrigerator. So maybe you can check that out the next time you go to Costco. I'm going to shred about 2 cups of cheese and scramble up about 10 to 12 eggs. Add about a 1/4 cup of milk to the eggs and then scramble it all really well. I also added salt and pepper just to taste, however much you prefer. Now that the pie crust is done and out of the oven, I'm going to add the ham and cheese first, and then I'm going to pour all of the scrambled eggs on top. It didn't really cover all of the ham, so I just took a fork and smoothed everything over. I don't know if you can tell this, but my pie crust did not come out perfectly. It was sort of fallen over and sunken down on one side, but this is just for my family. It didn't have to be anything special or beautiful, so I just left it like it was, popped it in the oven, baked it for about 45 minutes at 375 degrees, and then it came out absolutely beautiful. You'll know when it's done when there's not any kind of sogginess in the center. You can really tell when a quiche has lifted and puffed as much as it's going to, and you just want to make sure you don't overcook it to the point where the top is burned. That would really be a detriment to the final flavor, so just keep an eye on it. It should be done in less than an hour for sure. I'm just going to slice up some bananas and have that as a side. And this was a super simple meal to put together. It certainly wasn't a 15 minutes and we're done kind of meal, but it was very easy to throw together and perfect for this cold evening. In my live video on Tuesday, I talked about how I was really trying to focus on health and nutrition, but I'm not a completely changed person, and sometimes I just really want comfort food. That is the explanation for this meal. So it was Saturday. We were having an extra guest over for dinner, and I had just gone to Target, which if you haven't gone to Target and sort of browse through their grocery items, a lot of times they will yellow tag their clearance groceries. There's a lot to be found in the fresh meats and in the bakery section especially. So I was able to find these jalapeno poppers that were special for Kendall's fiance. He likes hot stuff. I've never in my entire life had a jalapeno popper. I'm really terrified of them, but I saw these on discount and I thought he would really enjoy them. So I got them. I'm going to put them in the oven. They're already put together completely. So all I had to do was sort of fix the bacon and they were ready to go in the oven. So I'm going to put these in the oven and then I'm going to cook our hamburger meat for our Sloppy Joe sliders. I really try to have good high quality meat in my freezer and refrigerator. And this month I'm really working at sort of working all of that down so that I can restock my supply in my freezer and refrigerator. This hamburger meat had a little more fat left in it than I'm used to. If I ever have the Aldi organic meat, I never have to drain it at all, but I certainly didn't want to have greasy sloppy joe sandwiches. So I went ahead and did the extra step of draining the grease out, and then put it back in the skillet and added about a half a cup of mustard and maybe 3/4 cup of ketchup. You probably already know this about me, but I'm not very good at measuring things when I'm not following a recipe. I try to be more mindful of it whenever I'm recording a recipe for y'all to watch, because I do want it to be a little more scientific than just guess your way around it. But on this day, I just was in a hurry and didn't take the time to measure. So probably half a cup of mustard and 3/4 cup of ketchup, but honestly I had to add several times to make sure that it was the right consistency. If you've never made sloppy joes before, you don't want it to be runny, but you don't want it to be dry either. So just make sure that it's a nice firm sticking together consistency without it being too dry. I also added a 1/4 cup of brown sugar and some salt to flavor. I also got these little slider buns from the bakery section at Target. They were on discount as well. So instead of just having what we normally do, sloppy joes with no bread, we had a slider to go with it today. So that was a nice little addition to what we normally have. I didn't really mention them before, but the sweet potato fries that I put in the oven at the beginning of the meal were from Costco. It's just a gigantic bag of organic sweet potato fries that are super easy to just throw in the oven. They crisp up really nice, and I can feel really good about the quality and nutrition that they're adding to the meal. Sometimes if I just have regular French fries from the freezer in a bag, I don't feel like that is giving my family good quality food. But these sweet potato fries, I think, add a good amount of nutrition, and I really have enjoyed having them in the freezer just as a backup and a go-to for a quick side dish that I know is going to be a family favorite, but also is going to be packed full of nutrition as well. I'm just going to put this slider together with a little bit more mustard, and I did brave the jalapeno popper. You will be very proud of me to know that I was able to eat it without dying, and I actually enjoyed it. So maybe Alex and I can enjoy jalapeno poppers together in the future, even if no one else was willing to try them. For our last recipe, let's talk about this delicious and perfectly southern fried pork chop recipe. I found these pork chops reduced at Target as well, so it was a perfect opportunity for me to have something that we very rarely eat here. I'm going to start by boiling some potatoes. I had these potatoes in the pantry, and I guess this is the time of year when potatoes are either going to be really fresh or really at the end of their rope. I had not had these potatoes in the pantry long at all, but they had already started going bad. So I just wanted to cook up all of the rest of the bag. That's why I have such a gigantic pot full of potatoes, but they didn't last long, so I guess it was really good that I did. I'm just going to dice all of them up into big chunks and cover them with water. Put them on the stove and boil them until they are nice and soft. It's really important to salt your potatoes while they're cooking and not wait until the end and after you've already boiled them. That's going to really add to the flavor of the end result of the potatoes. And if you forget, it's not that big of a deal, but it is going to be difficult to get them salty enough, at least for my preference. Now that the potatoes are on their own, let's move to the pork chops. I love fried pork chops. It reminds me of my mom and the way that she would make dinner for us whenever I was growing up. It's just a picture of childhood and of home, and I was really glad that I found these reduced pork chops. They are bone in, but if your family sort of balks at the bones, you can just get them boneless and follow the same directions. So before I start, I'm going to put some olive oil on my griddle. While that oil is heating, you want it to get nice and hot. You want it to be shimmering, but not quite smoking. So while the oil is heating up, go ahead and mix up about a cup of flour and probably 2 teaspoons, maybe 3 of salt, and a good helping of pepper. Mix all of that together and then dredge your pork chops in the flour mixture. You want both sides to be nice and covered with the flour, and then gently put them on the griddle or the skillet wherever you've been heating your oil. You'll want your pork chops to brown on one side before you flip them, and if they are hard to flip, that probably means that they're not quite ready. A lot of times when you fry something that is coated in a flour batter, it usually will lift up whenever it's ready to flip. If you're having to scrape it off, it probably means that it's not quite time. You'll give it about 3 to 5 minutes on each side, flip it over, and then allow it to cook through. Overcooked pork chops are not very good, so there's no need to cook them to death. Just cook them long enough for them to cook through, and then remove them from the griddle or the skillet. You'll want to make sure that you save all of the drippings from your pork chops, and we're going to use that to make some pork chop gravy. So gather all of your drippings, all of the little extra bits and pieces that came off of the pork chops while you were frying them, and move them to a skillet if you're cooking them in a griddle. I really considered doing this gravy on the griddle, but I knew that it would end up poorly and it would end up all over the stovetop. So I just went ahead and dirtied another skillet and put all of those drippings into the skillet, turned on the heat, and added about a half cup of flour. You can maybe add a 1/4 cup depending on how much gravy you want to make. I added about a half a cup of flour and then whisked it around to get all of the flour coated on all of the drippings as well as all of the extra little bits and pieces. After you've cooked the flour for a minute or two, add in a cup of milk, whisking it as you pour in the milk. You'll want to make sure and do this so that you don't get a lot of clumps and lumps in your gravy. If you just go ahead and keep whisking for about 4 to 5 minutes, it'll start thickening up and it will be the perfect complement for your fried pork chops. When the boiled potatoes are done cooking, just pour out most of the water, reserving about a half a cup, maybe 1 cup of water. I accidentally poured out too much, so I ended up adding about half a cup of milk and then 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to stir all of that together, and this meal is ready to serve. I'm going to serve it with some of my fresh bread that I baked in my bread maker, and you can find that recipe as well as all of the other recipes that I talked about in today's video down in the description box. I really enjoyed creating these meals for my family and also sharing them with you. I hope these recipes give you a couple of ideas for next week's meal plan, and I'm looking forward to sharing more recipes with you next Friday. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful week. I love you, and I will see you again next time.